Welcome to the Long Thread podcast about spinning, stitching, and weaving by hand. The podcast is presented by Long Thread Media, publishers of Spin-Off, Handwoven, Piecework, and Little Looms magazines. Find us online at longthreadmedia.com. Trainway Silks is where weavers, spinners, knitters, and stitchers find the silk they love. Select from the largest variety of silk spinning fibers, silk yarn, and silk threads and ribbons at trainwaysilks.com. You'll discover a rainbow of colors thoughtfully hand-dyed in Colorado. Love natural? Trainway's array of wild silks provide choices beyond white. If you love silk, you'll love Trainway Silks, where superior quality and customer service are guaranteed. I'm your host, Long Thread Media co-founder Ann Marrow. Nearly 100 volunteers have been working quietly on an epic project to republish the classic Handweaver's pattern book by Marguerite Porter Davison. The book is an essential resource for four-shaft weaving, initially published in 1941, that's been out of print for more than 20 years. The project is known as the Big Weave. So, Caroline, Donna, and Anita, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we talk about this exciting new project, I am going to start by asking each of you to just give me a little bit of information about you and your background. Caroline, could we start with you?
Sure. I'm Caroline Cooley Brown. My grandmother was Marguerite Porter Davison, and through a lot of executor work, I was able to obtain the copyright to Marguerite's 1951 revised edition to her Handweaver's pattern book that she published then. She died suddenly in 1953 and the family took it over. So it took a while to get this copyright, which I was so luckily gifted by my cousins who actually inherited it. So, and through our organization of Bainbridge Artisans Resource Network, familiarly called BARN, we decided to see if we could revise this book. So I'm a facilitator. This book is all about knowing that the weaving community would love to have this book back in publication and improved, because we're correcting mistakes and reweaving the samples and updating things. But we're keeping also her voice, that we wanted to honor Marguerite's voice and how she put out the book. So that's what we've been doing. It's been a 2-year project at least, and Anita helped us obtain Schiffer Craft as our publisher, and Donna here is one of the main head weavers, and they're weaving all 1,249 or whatever it is samples, and 300 and some treadlings. Anyway, my background is I'm a fiber artist, and so my cousins, and they wanted to keep it in the family, so they decided I would be the right one to own the copyright.
So Donna, you've been working on the weaving part of this. Can you tell me what your background is and how you came to be involved in this?
Sure. Knitting was my gateway drug, and then spinning. And so it was later in life that I came to weaving, but I'm just really passionate about it. And the way I got involved in this is I was having lunch with Madeline, and as I live here on Whitby, and we're part of the same guild. So she said, "Hey, what do you think about helping to get our weavers to weave this?" And I was like, wow. So I've been coordinating the Whitby Weavers Guild, Davison Weavers, as we call them. And we've had, right now, there's a total of 22 of us on board, and 13 are currently weaving the last chapter. So it's been a lot of fun and a real journey. And it really reflects the love of weaving, the dedication of the people from this group that have been so enthusiastic and really helpful.
And Anita, you are the third member of our trio here. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to be involved in this project?
Yeah, knitting was also my gateway drug as a child. And I have been knitting for, or weaving for 20 years, 25 years. Anyway, a long time. And I am a former editor of Handwoven magazine and still a member of the tech editing staff for Long Thread. And I write books. And So I came to be involved because Sarah Bixler of Redstone Glen had been teaching at Barn on Bainbridge Island. And the group there, Caroline's group, talked to her about, well, how do we publish a book? And Sarah said, well, you should talk to Anita because she's done that. So, yeah. And because I already had the connection, I had already published a book with Schiffer. I put the group in touch with Schiffer, and I have been part of the kind of technical steering committee. So we have Susie Lyles, Madeline Vanderhoot, me, Sarah Bixler, as people who are, people who teach or publish about weaving, have been sort of doing technical guidance. And we're now getting into the phase where I'm helping to coordinate the creation of the final drafts for the book.
So, Caroline, what has it been like to have this public connection with somebody who was a member of your family? Because presumably, this was somebody who was part of your family that was, a mother and grandmother, and her work at the same time had this whole other life as a touchstone for so many weavers. Is that something that you were aware of?
She died when I was a baby, so she didn't know me. But my mother, who is Marguerite's only daughter, I grew up with stories that she told me. She was very proud and loved her mother very much. And she made sure that I knew about her. And she gave me letters of hers that she wrote from her time in Brazil. All these stories of her helping her mother warp looms up in the attic studio that she had in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. And my mother never became a weaver, but our family is full of artists. So even extending out to the Porter family that Marguerite was a part of. Her mother was a painter, Marguerite obviously a weaver, and then my mother was a painter, and my sister was a weaver too. So she was just part of my life growing up, and I just dearly wish I could have known her, or remembered her. So it is. I'm not a public person that per se, but I embrace it only because she was so important to the weaving community that I want to help all the people who honor her to get to know her and to put out in a better form, even the book that she published. She was so intense during the late 40s. I look at all the things that she did. She was part of guilds. She came out many times. By the time I was born, I was out in Portland, Oregon growing up, and she came out numerous times and go up and down the coast of the whole West Coast. She would go down to California and back up. And so it was just part of my life that she was there as an important person. And so as I've said, this project isn't about me, but I am just so honored that my family chose me to be able to put this out into the public. And with we have almost 100 people working on this project. Wow. It's just incredible. And it's an incredible group.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Gabi Van Tassel from Bluebonnet Crafters, and I'm the inventor of Turtle pin looms. Pin looms are small handheld looms that quickly weave self-contained fabric pieces like squares, hexagons, and more. Weave with almost any yarn you have on hand, then combine the fabric pieces into projects of any size. These looms make wonderful companions for any fiber lover, at home or on the go. I'd love for you to visit us at turtleloom.com to explore the full loom catalog, patterns, and more. Hope to see you there. And now back to the show.
So Donna, what is it like to be part of the next chapter? I mean, you have a team who are working on this, and we've, it's a book, so there are chapters. How does it feel to be kind of part of the next chapter?
It's exciting. I mean, and now that we can actually talk about it instead of keeping it secret, it's even more exciting. So it's been an opportunity for me to learn so much because there's a lot of technical aspects to this. There were some errors in the book, of course. And then at the same time, as we're working on this, it's like, how in the world could they accomplish this with snail mail and no technology? So we're very blessed to be part of that, and to know that I've had a small contribution to making this happen is quite exciting. And I think that's I could say that for all of the people that I know that are weaving. They're just really thrilled to be part of this and to be putting it out into the world.
So how does it work? How has this come together? You have a variety of people weaving, but how did it go from we want to revive this book to you do this, you do that? Like, what is the process like?
The process started with Catherine Camp, who's my main administrator, and I deciding we needed to revise the book. And then it just exploded due to Sarah and Anita and Madeline and and Donna, of course. And it was the enthusiasm for the project was just huge. And we just somehow thought we could do it. And we have Alex McKeon and Sally Marin at our barn. Alex decided, since she's a talented weaver, she's headed up the weaving process. And it was just it took time to decide how we wanted to do the samples, what color, what size, all the details. And we all decided that we wanted to keep it monochromatic. And it was the weavers that, like Anita, who've done publishing before, who said, let's do it in dark blue and a natural color because it'll photograph better. I was rereading Marguerite's introduction to her book, and she very much explains that in that introduction that she wanted them monochromatic so you could focus on the structure of the weaving. People have asked, why aren't you doing it in color? Well, that's why. We wanted to honor her way of doing it. So all the weavings are just gorgeous in this dark blue and natural and sometimes a little light blue if there was a third color, involved. So it was a matter of, how long did it take before we started weaving? Donna and Anita could answer that one, but there was quite a bit of time taken to decide how we were going to do it.
There were so many technical questions. There was the whole color question and coming up with a palette. One of the really important decisions and one of the things that weavers will want to know about this book is that Marguerite's book's tie-up is for a sinking shed loom. This is all done for a rising shed loom because that is what a lot of the people doing four-shaft weaving are doing today is for harnesses that they are using jack looms. And so the tie-ups in the book are being done for jack looms. So yeah, and then there was the question of, okay, we need to standardize on the samples. How wide do they need to be? How are we going to indicate for the photographer? Because the photography is not being done by Marguerite, who's heading up the project. It's being done by photographers at the publisher who are not weavers. And so how are they going to know which side is up? How are they going to know which side of the weaving they're looking at, and how are they going to know which side is up? So we had to come up with ways to basically build into the weaving, into the samples themselves, a visual sign that they would know, that the photographer is going to know, it's this side up. And, this is so that they're doing the correct side of the weaving that they're photographing, and then that it's not upside down. And then somebody, I don't remember who, had the bright idea that we could do an exhibit of all of this after it's done, because the weaving community will want to know. And wouldn't it be fun if there could be an exhibit, first of all, at Barn, at the Bainbridge Artists Resource Network, and then possibly going to guilds or weaving shows. And so it's like, okay, well, then we have to hang them. And how do we make them hangable? And how do we make them a fairly standard size? And how are we going to even tag them to know which sample is which? And so there were just huge amounts of discussion that went in, and a standards document that had to be. And of course, we did the standards document and we sent it to the guilds that were involved, which are on both coasts and, all over the country. And we thought we had it nailed. And then they came back and said, well, what do you mean by this? Which is a perfectly legitimate, these are perfectly legitimate questions. So it has been a huge learning experience for all of us, I think.
How many people overall are involved, do you think?
It's close to 100 if we count almost or 80 weavers of sorts. And then there's technical people. We have some tech help that we've recently signed on. And we have people at Barn that are helping that aren't weavers. So we've kind of counted up close to 100. And what we've gained because we can show these samples, we've already obtained a show at our Bainbridge Island Museum of Art at the same time we're doing a book launch. It's September of 2027. The book should come out in the summer, but we're going to have a huge party and celebrate our weavers, and they'll be able to see the weavings hanging in a very professional space. And we're hoping to obtain other places that can show it. So, but that'll be our first.
And it seems like such a long time from now as we're speaking in the summer of 2026 to wait till the summer of 2027. But it's been years since weavers were able to buy a new copy of this book, right?
Oh, yeah. It went out of print in 2005. The publisher who was publishing the book, and that was really the only book he published, sold his company and they quit doing books. So it's been out of print for over 20 years. I mean, I have a receipt from my mother's papers that show she got like $2 worth of royalties in 2001. So I know there were a few things selling.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. You know, I love this idea of all of this group participation. Way back in Interweave's history, in Handwoven's history, there was the Strickler book, which was kind of the 8-shaft, which saw itself as the 8-shaft version of the Green Book. And it was done by the Boulder Handweavers Guild. And it was that sort of group participation and spirit and being part of something.
Yes. And I would say that was my grandmother's way. She loved even being part of guilds. Like I said, she loved meeting weavers. And that's why she traveled so much in her last couple of years. And she was the best saleswoman for her book. And then she wanted to help them, use it and help with their weaving. So I just always feel that this is how she would want this done if she could do it. And it would be as thrilled, or what would be, however you want to think of life after life.
I think it's really important to mention the importance of guilds and how vital that is, because that's what's bringing this together in a way. That's where all the weavers are coming from. So my connection is that I'm in the same guild and a friend with Madeline, and she said, "Hey, what do you think?" So we took it to our guild and said, "Hey guys," and boy, everybody jumped. And in the meantime, we've had a couple of events to really celebrate that. Caroline came and spoke to the guild. We've had, since we were being very quiet about it, we were just calling it sample weaving, and would meet in the library between the business meeting and the program. So I could distribute yarn, collect samples, and then we'd have a couple of get-togethers so people could see what had been woven at that point and celebrate it. And then when we thought we were finished, we were handing the samples off to Caroline at the beginning of March, and Madeline hosted all of the weavers from our guild at her home, and we had all of the samples that we had woven spread out in the school. So it was the first time everybody except me, because I had them at home, could see all of the samples. And it was just a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, and it just really helps bring people together. It's been a great thing for the guild, I think, as well.
Now, you said you thought you were done.
Well, one of the chapters couldn't be woven as originally scheduled. So we said we would help with that. And we're doing a big chunk of this last chapter that's to be woven.
Gotcha.
And it's a toughie.
Actually, it's kind of fun. It's not a weave that most people were familiar with. So it was like, okay, where is this coming from and what is this about? And again, the learning opportunities have just been awesome and immense. That's really part of what drives people too.
Yeah. And just, sort of reinforcing the group aspect of it. When I think about Marguerite, she was part of that generation of weavers after, World War I, World War II, who were reviving weaving in the United States. She was a contemporary of Mary Meigs Atwater, Harriet Tidball. all of those people. And Mary Black. And so it's really, and we know when, you look at like Mary Meg's Atwater Shuttlecraft Guild newsletter, people were sharing ideas. People were writing each other. Oh, I discovered this. Look, here's this weave in this old weaving book from the, from Europe from hundreds of years ago or whatever. These things were being shared. And it was this age of discovery in the weaving community that's, it's very exciting. And they wrote each other and, and shared things, and we're so excited. And Strickler to me was sort of a continuation of that. And it's like that wide sharing and cooperation is sort of being revived through this project. And so, and there has been a lot of discovery. So I think from a historical standpoint, it's just really exciting to see that spirit.
One of the people that Marguerite it was really important to Marguerite was Lou Tate of the Little Loom House. And they became quite pen pals. And Lou Tate was a mentor for her for writing her first book, the 1944 book. And then she became quite active with that area, and then just went beyond and started publishing more books because she just got excited about publishing and helping other people's work get out there. So that was, like you said, she loved being with other weavers and being a part of a whole group.
So we've sort of talked a little bit about what this means, culturally, maybe even spiritually for weavers. But can we talk a little bit about what the Green Book means for weavers practically? Why are people so excited to get their hands on this again? And how are people using it?
Wow, that is such a great question, Anne. I think for, just speaking from kind of having been on Handwoven and stuff, there are so many projects through the years in Handwoven magazine where people started with the draft in Atwater and created a piece from it. It's a starting point for, I want to make something like this. I want to make this structure. What could I do with this? And people take it off in so many directions. They can combine things. They can just take the drafts as they're written and say, I'm going to do X repeats of that because I think it's really pretty. And I'm going to thread X repeats of that and I'm going to make a shawl. Or I'm going to, and the beauty of it, as Caroline said, is that the book is, the original book is in black and white. So you don't have to wonder what the structure is. You can see it very plainly and you can say, all right, I'm going to do this. And then you can go off sampling. You can say, I'm going to thread that, but I'm going to do it with this yarn. I'm going to vary the yarn weights. I'm going to vary the colors. I'm going to vary these things. And so it's just such a beautiful, the drafts in themselves are beautiful if you use them as is and just say, I'm going to do this many repeats, or they're a beautiful starting point for sampling and discovery. Another thing that's really amazing about the book is that she gives a threading draft and then gives all these variations of, you can tie it up and you can treadle it. You can tie it up these ways. You can treadle it these ways. So you can start with an overshot and then do it all these different ways that turns into some completely different structure. And weavers always love threading once and weaving multiple things off of that warp. And so that's one of the other brilliant things about the book. And actually, one of the other things that we've talked about with this new edition is to provide somewhat in the book and then, kind of supplementary through other things online. How do you take a draft and then design using that? And so we've talked about, it's such a great way to go from, I am weaving this project exactly as written as a recipe that I got, in a book or a magazine, to I am going to take this draft and I am going to go off and create my own thing. And Marguerite is just Davison is a framework for that. So a launch pad.
So starting out as a beginning weaver on a jack loom, I mean, many of people we hear all the time, well, it came with the loom, this person stopped weaving. And so it's like, oh, here's this treasure chest. Didn't always know what to do with it at first because I was on a jack loom and blah, blah, blah. But it's got so much in it. There's so many different places you can go with it. Now, working on the samples, so many people, all of the weavers that are looking at the samples we're making now go, wow, looking at that old black and white photo, I never would have thought it would look like this. And it's like seeing it now with our modern photography is going to help it just come alive again, because it does. It's like, whoa, that's awesome. I never would have thought that would look so awesome until I see it in person. And it's going to take off again.
Well, when Marguerite first decided to do this book, she was teaching weaving and realized there was no comprehensive book that had patterns in it that she could teach from. So it was from her incredible emphasis on education that started this project. And then as she got into it, she loved the creativity. And so that's a lot of the variations are her own, just because, well, what can I do now? What can I do now? And in the introduction, I think, or I know she said that this is not the end all at all. So she was really, she really talked about being this. I mean, I've been creative with this, but you can too, and keep going. There's a lot, and this is not the end all of all the patterns that can be made at all. And I think that philosophy is shown through what Nita and Donna have been talking about, that it does help you feel that way. And that was her whole point.
Obviously, there are some technical possibilities now that weren't available to Marguerite, such as, having color for everything and computer generated drafts. But how, with something this beloved, how do you decide what to leave as it is and what to update?
I think what we kind of all came to conclusions was to, if it kept her voice, if it kept her philosophy, then that's what we should do. And that, the keeping it monochromatic was a major decision with that. But when you go to, well, maybe we should use the jack loom instead, because many people who are weaving from it going, wait, the pattern's on the back. So let's correct that, and let's correct the mistakes. And so, we are keeping her writing in there for the most part, but we will be adding our own, updating, how to read the drafts and, fiber content, or fiber information, and in an updated bibliography. So Sandra at Schiffer has been really helpful in helping us decide some of those things. What's important and what's not. She's been invaluable.
Within the weaving community, the Green Book and Davison are these shorthands. Everybody knows what they are. But if you're not necessarily a weaver, understanding the importance of this book is a little bit abstract.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Julia Child's The Art of French Cooking. Right? Or oh gosh, what's the other book by Ron Bauer and The Joy of Cooking? The Joy of Cooking. Or, I was going to say Betty Crocker. My mother had the Betty Crocker cookbook, but this is way beyond.
For non-weavers, I describe it as a cult classic. I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's like, I'm, working on this cult classic, and that's really cool.
Yeah. But I can't picture, the Joy of Cooking ever, slipping out of print. And I think that the way that weaving has kind of transformed over the years kind of marks the rhythm of this a little bit.
Yeah. That's an interesting question, Anne, because as you know, some of us have fought over the years from time to time to keep Strickler in print. Mm-hmm. And the problem here is not the usefulness of the book or the demand for the book in the weaving community. It's the perception of publishers of the weaving community and not understanding that this really is like the joy of cooking. It never needs to go out of print. And part of the beauty of going with a publisher like Schiffer is that Schiffer has a different philosophy and model than some other publishers. And their philosophy is that you don't have things go out of print. That if there is, it's not going to be a New York Times bestseller. That's okay. They don't expect it to be. But they know that there will always be new generations of weavers who will want it, and that there will be demand for it always and steadily. And that is their philosophy and their model. And so they really are the right publisher for this book to live with. And besides having just an invaluable perspective. And so, yeah, we're lucky that they're there.
Well, one of the things about these classics, though, is that you don't always need more than one copy. Now, for this new edition, I think everyone who has ever bought one will probably need a new copy. But it sort of tracks with, if you're coming into weaving, it's a time when you would probably need to get this book. And so I think this is coming along at a time when we're finding more people getting interested in multi-shaft weaving for the first time. So it's kind of the matching up of the effort and the sort of zeitgeist.
Yes. Well, and I think Long Thread can take a certain amount of credit there too, because Little Looms is the magazine Little Looms, which, Anne, was your brainchild originally, is a gateway for a lot of people who start with a smaller, simpler, more portable loom, and then some of whom are going to move on to 4-shaft weaving. So it's through those new generations come through effort on the part of people who believe in the craft and want to keep it going.
Sharing in the enthusiasm of the weaving community sort of lifts us all at the same time. But what kind of trends do you think you have seen over the years through the Davison book? I'm mostly curious for Anita and Donna, who have been kind of weaving for a while independently. How have you seen this being brought into weavers' work over time? Like, are people trying different yarns? Obviously, the style of looms that people are using has changed a little bit.
Well, one thing I've seen is that when people are starting out, they're like, okay, well, what shall I weave? And where do I get this idea? I don't know how to design yet. Let me take something. And so here is this treasure of threadings and treadlings that people can play with. So it's a start. I think that people have gotten pretty used to here's a project, this is what you weave it with, blah, blah, blah. And this gives you another step away that says, okay, I can figure out what yarns I want and how I want to use this, but here's something that's all ready to go and ready to use.
Well, one of my favorite stories from Donna's Guild is that this one woman said, I never liked overshot at all. And then she had to weave some samples of it, and she fell in love with them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was curious about that. How did people get assigned various? Was there a lot of competition for certain twills? Like, how did people get assigned their structure?
Well, I can speak to that. I can remember sitting at the table here at my house with Madeline and the list of the different chapters. And okay, no, she's like, no, we really don't want that one. It turns out that's the one we're reading right now. But so we sort of picked and chose, what we thought we would like to weave, and then what was left over, what needed to be done. And it was interesting as the assignments went out. There were people who said, well, I've never woven that. I knew they were good weavers, but it's like, oh, yeah, you can do it, and so they did. And then on the other hand, there were times when people said, I don't want to do crackle, I do twills. It's like, okay.
But that seems like such an opportunity to really explore the spirit of the book, to weave something you're not familiar with.
Yeah. And our weavers, there was very few that said, no, I don't want to do that. They were like, yeah, what is this? Let's try it out. And we had the structure, the guidelines in terms of here's how we're going to do it. So that had already been established. I think we tweaked some things after I came on board with whatever came up questions from the samplers. But it was, okay, well, I'm going to learn about crackle. And hey, great. So we did. Now we're learning about barleycorn.
Barleycorn. I have only occasionally heard about barleycorn.
Exactly.
So for those of you who have been working on weaving this, do you think that new projects and inspiration are going to come from it? Are you thinking, oh, I've tried this and now I can't wait to put something new on my loom?
Yes, I definitely think that's the case. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of trends, I think one of the things that I see as a trend, and I think we're going to see more of as a result of this project, is we have such a huge variety of yarns available to us, color and texture, and changing colors. And I think that, and I have seen in the rigid heddle weaving community, partly because a lot of those people are coming from knitting, that, it's like, oh, they have all the novelty yarns and the color changing yarn, the space dyed, I think we're going to see more of that. Actually, one of my favorite pieces that I've woven and designed out of Davison, and I will actually be submitting it when we have our little show, is I spun some yarn that has regular color changes, and then took a twill out of Davison, modified it, and then wove a scarf that had one solid and one this regular color changing yarn, and with my hand spun. And it's to keep the color changes, I plied it with commercial mohair and silk. So it's like, okay, we've got hand spinning, we've got color changes, we've got taking Davison as a starting point, and then what if we play with these repeats in the twill and everything? So I think we're just going to see more and more play with the color, the multiple dimensions of structure and color and texture. And so, and I think it's, and one of the, challenges and beauties is there have been some samples in Davison where we've gone, gosh, I wish I knew what yarn they used, because it doesn't look like that. Exactly. We've said that a lot. Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know, did they use a chenille there? I don't know. I can't tell from the picture. Right. So, we have kind of made decisions and said, okay, this is the draft. We threaded it this way. We're documenting what we used, and this is how it looks. And that's because we weren't there. But I think that suggests that all the room there is to go off in different directions.
To play with it. Play with it. Yeah. I've been playing with my hand spun as pattern weft in overshot in some of these. So that's been a lot of fun. And then now that we have weaving software, we can play with these and see how they, if we take her threading and her treadling and her tie up and put the repeats back to back or reflect them, how does that change? And we can do that instantaneously on weaving software. So it's like, there's no limit to the possibilities.
One thing that might not be known about Marguerite was that late in life, she was also playing with new materials, including plastics. And wow. she was very much looking at the modern weaver, such as, the Bauhaus people. She realized she really bordering on that, but not, the people were taking it to the next level, and she was celebrating that. And so I have a piece or two of this plastic that she used. So she wasn't just into overshot and, coverlets. She loved it all.
So when she was working on creating this book, we've talked about the big weave, about all of this being the revival of the book being kind of a group project. How much do you know about what it was like for her to create the book originally? Was it more of a solo project, or did she also have a team?
The first book in 1944 was pretty much a solo project. My mom has a story of writing with her. let me backtrack. She had to go and get a loan from the bank during the wartime, which is not easy to get. And they weren't loaning to women normally. And she published it herself, but she had a printer a train ride down the line in Pennsylvania. And my mother remembers riding with her for that. But after the 1944 book came out and she republished it a couple of times, she decided to improve it. So she hired a photographer and she hired a graphic artist to draw the drafts and lay out the pages. And she was revising and adding patterns. I think she added about 160 patterns, and some of them are named after my family members and friends of hers. So she was really in her creative time and work. The children were grown. It was easy for her. Easier for her at that time, but it was pretty much her doing it in many ways. And in the acknowledgments of the 51 book, she does acknowledge quite a few weavers who helped her or find things and research. She loved research, so she was always finding new patterns. And the source book that she put out after that, which actually she died just before it got published, is a collection of Laura Allen's weave coverlet patterns. She took about 1,000 patterns and narrowed it down to about 300 that were, and then the graphic artist that she had hired for the 51 book did the drawings for that book. And that's how that one came about. And since she died suddenly, my grandfather, her husband, obviously, and the graphic artist continued working on it to make sure it got into print. So there was so much that she loved to do. I don't know how she had the time or energy, but again, she died when she was 65 or 66. So, she might have, it was up to the end. Right. She was working really hard. Mm-hmm. So during the wartime, the metals were scarce, all the printing materials. So there were a lot of hardships because of the war. And so after the war and things eased up in late 40s and into 1950, when she was finally kind of getting it into print, there were easier things. She did ask for a bit of help, like I said, with the photographer and the graphic artist. Mm-hmm. And then the graphic artist, he also was a weaver, and we're hoping to put in the drawing that he did of her studio, and it'll hopefully be in the book. And it has a picture of the sample loom that she used to do a lot of her samples right by the window. That the studio was in the attic of a 3-story house, and that's where she taught and where she wove. But it's a little 16-inch 4-harness loom that we're getting fixed up again, because I do have it now. So she wove every day. She was busy. Mm-hmm. But she always took time for family in the evenings. So it was a really remarkable life that she had. Yeah.
Well, I love the way that this, allows people to get to know her, not only through her work, but also through her life, her teaching, her character that comes through in this as well.
Yeah, she was quite a force. Yeah. She got things done.
So while we're looking forward to the book being released in summer of 2027, we will know to check with Schiffer when the book comes out. What else should we have an eye out for? I know that Barn is going to have exhibits. What's going to be around? What's going to be happening?
Well, there's a web page on the Barn website, the Big Weave webpage, which will have updates, and it's a place where people can sign up to get email notices about the book as it's moving through these last pieces, and there'll be a lot of celebration come time.
Barn is made up of 11 studios. It's a maker space of 11 studios, and the Fiber Art Studio, which is named after Marguerite, because my mother felt that this was a dream come true for Marguerite to have a weaving studio. So that's where you find the Big Weave. You go to the Barn Studio and you find the Big Weave link there. All the patterns will have whiffs made of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
yes.
and they will be available on the barn website for free, because this whole thing was put together by all the huge group. And that's, I want to honor them that they've put this together. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't have happened without this whole group. And it's been a very special group. We've just all enjoyed meeting together as far as I can see. And I'm going to miss them when we're done. So it's been an incredible project. And yes, we'll be putting out updates. You'll learn little tidbits of how we're doing, maybe more about my grandmother, just anything that seems pertinent to making. But we won't do it too often. People get... Anyway, that's where you'd find it.
There's been talk about getting some classes on design. I'm hoping that the new edition of this book really launches a lot of discussion and a lot of new classes about designing from drafts, designing woven pieces, and just gets a lot of people really interested and a lot of teachers very interested and teaching using this book as a basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is so exciting for everybody in the weaving community. And I love the fact that we're all talking about this as a group project, but also as something that's individually important, that people are going to be able to incorporate into their own practices, learn more about a weaver they look up to, and just really have this as a touchstone. So thank you all so much for your time. We are excited to see what develops.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, I'm honored to be here.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Long Thread Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks again.